Welcome everyone to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video, and today we're going to be continuing a series that we had to take a little break from as we were catching up on a lot of other things, a lot of other projects that were coming to an end at the time. But now we can get back into Demon Slayer Dark Fury, What If Tanjiro Had Venom, Part 4. As always, before I get into today's video, I want to say thank you to everyone who supports Power Core Productions and Podcastings. As always, I cannot do it without you guys. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow. But as always, if you like what you see on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. As we're winding down the year of 2021, we have seen a lot of major growth on the channel, so I want to thank you all for that as well. We hit our first 1,000 subscribers as we are on the road to 2K and beyond now. So again, thank you to everyone who supports the channel. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for commenting. And remember, you don't always have to be positive. Just tell me how you feel. Tell me your opinions down below, good or bad. I want all of your thoughts, all of your opinions, because that helps me grow as a channel and that helps me be a better writer. So I hope that I can keep doing you proud. But without further ado, we're going to get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Tanjiro would help get the young man off of the young girl. Once he removed the blonde-haired swordsman, the young woman would proceed to slap him in the face before leaving in anger. Tanjiro would turn to the young man as he recognized him from the Demon Course final selection, and he would ask him his name and just what he was doing. The young man would reveal himself to be Zenitsu, and he would explain that he were trying to get married as he didn't want to die alone. He showed that he really didn't care for being a demon slayer, and Tanjiro would ask him just why on earth he had taken this job in the first place. However, he would tell Tanjiro that he didn't want to become a demon slayer, but got into debt with a woman who gave him to his trainer, who in turn made him become a demon slayer in the first place. He continued to whine and to cry, and it became very annoying. So much so that a black sludge began to form on the side arm of Tanjiro, taking on Venom's face as he yelled at the young boy with a growl, telling him that if he didn't shut up immediately, then he was going to snap his neck into two. Tanjiro had to get a grip on Venom, telling him to remain under control and to not do such violent things. The two of them having an argument with one another as they were prone to do, and Zenitsu just being all the more horrified, unsure of if this was a demon or something along those lines. However, Venom would quickly snap that he was no demon, and that he in fact was something far greater, and would be much more of a nightmare than any demon that he could ever dream or conjure. Zenitsu was at a loss for words. He couldn't explain what Venom was. He had no idea what it even is. However, before the two could even have any further conversation, Tanjiro's crow would direct the two boys to the mansion ahead. Zenitsu's hearing would prove to be very sharp, comparable to Tanjiro's sense of smell, even without the enhancements of the symbiote. As the two made their way over to the mansion, they would see two scared children nearby, and Tanjiro would go up to them and ask what had happened, asking just what this mansion was. They would explain that it was known as the Demon's House, and that not too long ago their older brother had been taken inside. Just as they were speaking, a man would be thrown outside of the house as the doors opened and shut immediately, who would die moments later. However, the siblings were able to confirm that this was in fact not their brother. Tanjiro would try to console them, and Zenitsu, who was also terrified as well, as he did not want to enter into the house. But knowing that someone had to do so, Tanjiro would uncoil the box that was on his back as he held it beside him. He would tell the siblings to stay outside and for Zenitsu to protect them and to protect that box at all costs, before entering into his Venom Oni form, as the black mask would start to crawl onto his face. Venom in his voice would echo to Zenitsu that if anything happened to that box, he would have hell to pay. And in a blur of darkness, Tanjiro would rush inside of the mansion, leaving them behind. Not too long later though, the siblings would hear scratches coming from the box. Along with Zenitsu all getting scared, they would soon find themselves entering into the home, unaware of where they were as the house seemed to suddenly rearrange itself, trapping them and not giving them a way to get out. Although, thankfully, the younger sister was able to get out in time. However, the middle brother and Zenitsu was still within. Everyone trapped and stuck in their own ways. There wasn't anywhere for anyone to go. Tanjiro made his way through the house that seemed to be never changing, always moving and changing in different directions. While Zenitsu was with the middle child, the young man couldn't help but notice that despite Zenitsu being a warrior of sorts, he proved to be very cowardly, often even at his own detriment, causing him to wonder if he were truly worth saving in the first place. Zenitsu continued to look around frantically for the exit, as he hoped he could find his way out soon. The younger sister, while she believed she had escaped, had only been stuck in another room as well, as the house continued to change and rearrange its walls, seeming as if it moved around like a Rubik's Cube of some sorts. In the meantime, the demons of the demon house began to circle and approach from all directions. As Tanjiro made his way within, he would move across the wall swiftly, using his tendrils to swing and move about freely without any worry or care. Eventually tracking down, he would look to find where the older brother was. However, before he could get to him, the brother, who had been holding a drum, would immediately tap it once the door was open, causing the room to spin and to change once again. As Tanjiro got his bearings about him, he would search around in the home, before eventually he would come face to face with another oddly shaped being. However, Venom would alert him that this person was not a demon, but instead was a human. Although what he was dressed in was truly peculiar. The boy was dressed without a shirt, and he wore long blue pants with black shoes. He had 2 blades in each hand. They appeared to be nitrine swords, but they had been chipped along the edges as if they were jagged teeth. And he wore a boar's head as a mask. The young man puffed and shot in from his chest, acting as though he were a wild and reckless boar. As he continued to beat on himself over and over again, he would announce proudly that he was Inosuke. And in doing so, he went charging straight towards the demon that had now shown up. Tanjiro would turn to see the man lunge as he attacked on the demon. The demon was tall in stature, and he had what were known as drums sewn in all over his body, 1 in each shoulder, 1 on each side, and 1 that appeared to be in the stomach. Tanjiro went to watch and observe how the demon fought, announcing itself as Kyogai. As it continued to beat on its chest on the various drums, Tanjiro could see that it was performing a form of its own blood demon arts. Every time he tapped on the drum, the rooms would begin to shift and to change, whether it would be that it would spin or it would rotate in a various way. Tanjiro would use his black whips to stay about him, to allow him to move around from wall to wall without falling over, basically able to remain stationary and keep his senses about him. If it hadn't been for the symbiote, things could have been a lot more difficult. However, Tanjiro was able to keep his wits about him in the midst of the battle. However, before he could get a chance to strike, the boar-headed dual swordsman proved to be rather annoying, yelling out profusely as he would go and try to slice the other demons to shreds, ripping through and striking them down as quickly as possible. Tanjiro tried to ask him if he was a part of the Demon Slayer Corps, but he wouldn't respond, instead merely giving in to his primal instincts. In the meantime, Zenitsu would be walking around with the other young middle child. Eventually, though, they would come face to face with a demon. In doing so, Zenitsu would completely fall over, falling into an unconscious state as if he had gone to sleep, causing the young middle child to shake him profusely, hoping that he would wake up as they were about to be set upon by a bloodthirsty demon. However, thankfully, Zenitsu would rise to his feet, but he wasn't awake. As a cold silence fell over the room, Zenitsu would reach his hand down towards his sword. As he calmly stated thunder breathing first form, thunderclap and flash. Twirling in the air itself, he would spin out his sword that moved as if it were lightning striking across a thunderous sky. In a brief swishing motion, the demon was killed. Upon going back to his feet, he would slowly awaken but have no memory of what had happened, and he would believe that the young man had actually killed the demon in the first place. The young man now wondering if Zenitsu were truly a warrior or if he were just playing with him this whole time. Meanwhile, Inosuke would continue on in his rampage, attacking and effortlessly fighting off many of the other would-be demons, devouring them as he used his own style of breathing, beast breathing third form, the third fang devourer. As Tanjiro tried to keep his wits about him, he stayed focused on fighting the main demon. As he had come to look closer into its eyes, he could see that there was a number inscribed in the pupil, thus giving him confirmation that it were one of the 12 Kizuki, 12 of the elite demons under Muzan Kibutsuji. Now knowing that he were facing one of the 12, he had to work to get some of its blood, as it could be vital. Tanjiro would eventually find where the older brother was, along with his younger sister who had gotten in as well. He would tell the two of them to stay safe, as he understood the older brother had only survived because he had managed to get his hands on one of the demon's drums, and had been using it to change the rooms whenever the demons got too close, and that was how he was surviving for as long as he did. Tanjiro would tell him and the sister to continue to do so, and that he would come for them when the time came. Once he did, he would exit the room and bind it with some of Venom's own symbiotic webbing, keeping it in place so that the door wouldn't open, even if the demons got too close, using the drum as a last resort to keep them safe. As he continued and made his way, he would come into contact with the drum demon, Kyogai. As the two came face to face, Kyogai would come into contact with Tanjiro in the room. He would continue to display his prowess with his blood demon arts, as he would beat the drums in an unorthodox rhythm, causing the floors and the walls to move and rotate over and over again. Thankfully, Tanjiro was able to use the tendrils to keep himself in place in the center of the room, moving from wall to wall effortlessly and matching the demon in pace, but still being thrown unorthodoxly a few times, needing to keep his wits about him if he needed to get close enough to go in for the final strike. Eventually, Zenitsu, along with the middle child, would continue to make their way throughout the mansion, until eventually they were able to find an exit. However, just as they were approaching, they too would come face to face with none other than Inosuke, the two of them becoming immensely scared as they met the boar-headed swordsman. Once they were able to find the closest exit, all three would eventually jump out and make their way, Zenitsu deciding that he would stick to doing what he had originally been asked to do in the first place, in protecting the box no matter what, while the middle child had waited for his siblings to return, his older brother and his younger sister, hopefully. His siblings were kept safe in the room while Tanjiro would take the fighting against the main demon, one of the 12 Kizuki. The demon, however, would lament his own frustrations, and in this, Tanjiro was able to learn more about why it did the things that it did. He would learn about its past life as a human, that his main cause for anguish in this world were those who belittled his writing and his love and passion for it, and that he was told that the only thing he could be good for were beating on drums. Venom could sense the hesitation in Tanjiro. The sympathy and compassion was starting to creep inside of its heart. While Venom could try to empathize with the demon, he understood ultimately what needed to be done, and he warned Tanjiro to keep his senses about him, to not let himself be put into a compromised situation. Even if the demons never asked to be put in this situation, the fact of the matter was that they were now demons, and now the best thing that he could do would grant them a merciful death, and in doing so, he could free them of the pain and the torment that they had gone through. Once Tanjiro was able to get a hold of the demon's patterns and how it moved and beat its chest, he would take one deep breath before using a double breathing attack. First, he would use the Venom breathing fourth form, the Buzzsaw Shield. In doing so, he would spin his sword around him until eventually a black wheel of blade would start to form around him, allowing him to move his sword basically like a buzzsaw. In tandem, he would combine it with his water-breathing ninth form, Splashing Water Flow, the combination causing him to move like a flowing blade as the spinning sword would move around in the room, opposite of the demon and its spinning of the room itself with its blood demon arts. As the two moved as opposing forces, Tanjiro, in an effortless motion, would decapitate the demon and cut its head off rather quickly. As the demon now fell to its death, now feeling that its life was about to come to an end, Tanjiro, in a show of respect, would recognize his blood demon arts as truly unique, and he would recognize him as a writer, giving the demon solace and comfort as he would fade away into death. Before completely disintegrating from the death of the Nichiren sword, Tanjiro would take a blood sample and keep it kept away for safekeeping, before eventually locating where the older brother and younger sister were. Once he found them, they quickly made their way outside, Tanjiro effortlessly striking down any of the demons that got into their way, until eventually they made their way to the outside. Once they had gotten out, he could see firsthand that now they had to deal with another situation on the outside. The swordsman in the boar mask was attacking Zenitsu and had beaten him badly into the ground. He could sense with his own keen sense of smell that whatever he was protecting was inside of that box was demon related, and in doing so, it needed to be destroyed. However, Zenitsu would effortlessly worked to defend against Inosuke, protecting the box to the best of his ability because he had made the promise to do so. Zenitsu would try the best he could, but would continue to be beaten into the ground over and over again. Zenitsu already knew that there was a demon in the box, but he understood that Tanjiro had his reasons for doing what he did. And in a show of loyalty, he wasn't going to let anything bad happen to it. In response, Inosuke would continue his attack until eventually Tanjiro would step in and push him aside. Lifting up Zenitsu, he would thank him for taking care of the box, as he would turn to face against Inosuke, the boar-masked swordsman, yelling at him and telling him that he was going to get to that box one way or another, and that nothing was going to stop him. Inosuke would charge like a mad bull towards Tanjiro, and Tanjiro, using his strength enhanced by that of the symbiote, would pick him up into the air and slam him into the ground, hoping that that would be enough. However, despite even giving him a few cracked ribs, Inosuke would come crawling back to his feet, before charging and giving Tanjiro a headbutt to the back, slamming him into the side of the trees. Even Venom grunted a little bit, as he didn't expect a human to have that kind of power. With him now back on his feet, the two would lock horns once again. Tanjiro, trying desperately to end the fight as quickly as possible, would direct his punches towards his lower midsection, hoping to wind him and keep him out of the fight as quickly as possible, before eventually knocking back Inosuke into the ground once more. As the boar-masked fighter got up one last time, Tanjiro was now starting to become worried. It seemed like nothing they did could keep this guy down, and they weren't sure just how far into the violent fight they were going to have to go if they wanted to subdue him. However, this would only prove to be but for a showy act of defiance, as the moment he tried to take a step forward, he would pass out from the pain and collapse. Tanjiro was grateful that the fight had now come to an end, and he was happy to see that the siblings had been reunited, as they thanked him for everything that they had done. Eventually, once the house were clear of demons, Tanjiro knew that there were bodies of those who were unfortunate enough to be their victims, and in doing so, he and Zenitsu would go in to take the bodies, before burying them and giving them a proper funeral. Inosuke would soon wake up as well, and he would see what they were doing, and at first he chastised them for doing so, as he believed there was no real reason in burying the dead once they were dead. However, Tanjiro could see that when it came to Inosuke, all he needed was a bit of misdirection, and using his words carefully, he was able to trick him into helping bury the other corpses. Before leaving though, Inosuke would remark that whatever Tanjiro was, he was sure damn strong. However, Tanjiro noticed that there was an off way that he said his name. He said it in a variety of ways, but he never said it the right way. Tanjiro tried to correct him a few times, but it proved to be pointless, as Inosuke was determined to call him everything except Tanjiro. They also asked what he was underneath that mask anyway, or why he wore it. Zenitsu and Tanjiro believing that maybe he suffered some serious scar, or maybe he was badly deformed, but that proved not to be the case at all, as the moment he took off his mask, they would see that he were rather handsome for a young man. Zenitsu, even for a brief moment, muttering that he actually looked kind of girly and a bit cute, although they quickly had to remember that this was a boy after all, but a good-looking one nonetheless. Once the bodies were buried and the siblings were now on the descent to go back home from where they had come, this now left the three swordsmen together. They would ask Inosuke just how he had gotten his swords in the first place, as they didn't see him during the final selection. However, he would explain that he got his swords a different way. He had come across a couple of Demon Slayer swordsmen in the woods one day, and he decided that he just wanted the swords for himself. So after beating them up, he basically robbed them and took the blades, and he had just been on the hunt out in the woods, fighting and killing demons whenever he came across, doing whatever tickled his fancy. As the sun was beginning to set though, they were all feeling a bit tired, and they had some wounds that needed to be healed, but they weren't sure of where to go. This was when Tanjiro's crow would appear beside them, telling them that at the descent from the mountains, there was a small shack where they could be led to rest, a home that was known for treating Demon Slayer hunters, giving them a place where they could recover and gain some food. It was known as a manor that was surrounded by wisteria. The crest of the wisteria was on top, and the crow would tell them that that was where they needed to go if they wanted to have their wounds treated. Once they arrived at this home not too long later, they would come to learn that the home belonged to a family who were once rescued by demon hunters, and as a way of showing their gratitude, they let demon slayers stay there for free. There was an older woman who would give them food and clothing to change into, allowing them all a chance to relax and recover from their ordeal. As night befell them, the three young boys would begin to eat and enjoy themselves. After a doctor had tended to their wounds, Tanjiro, who didn't have too many thanks to Venom helping him. As they all sat together, they would come to ask the main question that they had been wanting to know for a while now. And that was just, what was Venom? What was this being inside of Tanjiro? And why was he traveling with a demon in the first place? When it came to the first question, Venom would speak for himself. The black sludge appearing from Tanjiro's arm. He would explain the planet that he had come from, and he explained just what symbiotes were. Of course, for Zenitsu and Inosuke, they couldn't possibly believe that there were these other beings from outer space that were strong and capable of doing such things, and enhancing a human to the point where they could go toe-to-toe with demons of all people. But Tanjiro and his power was living proof that they existed. And when it came to the second question, well, he explained the situation involving his sister Nezuko and their family, explaining that his goals as a demon slayer was to find Muzan Kibutsuji, and to figure out a way to turn the demon back into a human and save his sister's life. Just as he was finishing the story, the box that Nezuko had been in began to open slowly, as the young girl would free herself for a bit so that she could stretch. The moment she did so, and Zenitsu got a good look at her, he was completely smitten by her beauty, eventually turning from his sense of shyness to a sense of chivalry, as he would begin to berate Tanjiro for carrying her in a box the way that he did, and that someone as beautiful as her only deserved the finest things. This eventually turned into a scene of never-ending chasing as Zenitsu would follow around her all throughout the room, looking to make the cute demon girl his girlfriend, while Tanjiro would chase after him profusely, knocking him upside the head repeatedly, telling him to leave his sister alone, while Inosuke was just completely enamored with all of them in the first place. Although eventually, as the night wore on, everyone would eventually go into their own individual beds to go to sleep, all of them getting a chance to rest and to recover from everything that they had been through. However, Venom had stayed up with Tanjiro, the two of them speaking telepathically for some time, as they had a lot that they needed to discuss when it came to the demons and their fighting style. Venom had taken note of their blood demon arts, and he was beginning to wonder if maybe they could create something like that on their own. Tanjiro wondered what he meant by this, but Venom would explain that symbiotes could do amazing things when they were with their host. And if the blood demon arts were any indication, then Venom, if he were able to copy what he had learned from Tanjiro and his swordplay, and was able to come up with venom breathing, then maybe he could come up with venom arts. Tanjiro would be intrigued by this, and the two would speak long into the night for a while, until eventually it was time for them to get some rest. The two, now even more determined to see their mission through until the end, with new unforeseen power that could come along the way, that could aid them in their fight against the demons. In the meantime, far off back in the eastern side of the country, there lied a prison that was held. A prison for those who had committed the serious of crimes. And for these criminals, if life in prison wasn't their sentence, it was almost always death. Among their prisoners was a man from the now newly formed, not too long, from the east in the United States. This man had fled, for he had committed various crimes all across the New World, and had somehow made his way from the East Coast to the West Coast, before sailing off in a cargo ship into the eastern side of Japan. As he continued and made his way, his killing streak continued along with him, until eventually he was caught and captured, and he was sentenced to death. His name was Cletus Cassidy. However, as he was being led away through one city as it was a rest stop before the prison, he had lashed out in an attempt to get away from the police, and in doing so he found himself biting onto the hand of a young man that had gone by, but when he bit him, his hand, the blood, he had tasted human blood before, but whatever was inside of that boy, it wasn't human at all. And unknown to him, what was inside of his body was now not human as well. In fact, as he sat inside of his prison cell, he could feel that something was beginning to change within him. Something that he couldn't completely describe, something that he couldn't completely explain. His crimes were so horrific that the judge didn't spare any time giving him a date for his execution. And as the night had finally come for him to die, as he was brought out to the gallows, for his neck to be sliced off cleanly by a sword, he looked up into the sky and he saw that there was a blood moon, the redness of its surface reflecting into his eyes, as he felt a power beginning to crawl all over him, a power that he couldn't completely describe, that it began to transform him and change him in ways that he couldn't possibly imagine. As the sword was brought down over his neck, at the last moment, a red pusk, a red fluid would begin to crawl all over him. The red fluid catching the blade and holding it in place. As it slowly began to crawl over his skin, it felt as though it were ripping through his flesh, his very being, as if he were changing it to something new, but at the same time, as if he were revealing his true self. The guards were completely afraid as they looked and ran for backup. However, as one attempted to go to the door of the courtyard, he was snatched by red tendrils and dragged back, his screams echoing across the prison as the prisoners could hear what was going on, but they couldn't see it. These screams, they sounded like the screams of men who had been turned back into little boys, begging for their mothers, crying to their gods, praying for mercy but getting absolutely none. They were blood-curdling. They were earth-shattering. They were completely the things out of nightmares. The prisoners could only describe the sound as something that came out of pure hell. It was brief, as if there were many voices, and then suddenly they all disappeared until there was nothing left but the thick, pungent smell of blood that started to fill as an aroma all throughout the prison. The courtyard itself, it looked as if it had been baptized in blood, as a red figure slowly began to make its way. It walked casually through the halls of the prison. The other prisoners could hear it coming. They could smell it. They all turned away from the small slit in their doors. Many pretended to be asleep. Others turned to face the wall. None of them wanted to see what was walking past them at that moment. All they could hear was a dark and ominous laugh that slowly trickled and faded away until eventually the main doors opened. Wherever the remaining prison guards were, there were even more blood-curdling screams, until eventually they fell silent too. Soon, the main gate would open wide. As the man walked out, the red fluid slowly receding as it went back into himself, as he looked back at the prison. He cackled and smiled a bit as he continued to walk away into the night. The blood would soon attract other demons who would descend upon the prison. Finding the guards all dead and prisoners locked away in their cells, the doors were open and a feeding frenzy would begin. However, when they returned back to their master, Muzan, they would inform him that when they arrived, it appeared as though something had already killed all of the guards. But whatever it was not demon, for they could not sense any trace of demon around. But what had happened here couldn't have been done by any ordinary man. This now caught Muzan Kibutsuji's interest, and he called 2 of his elite demons to his side. Each one had a number inscribed on its eye, and he told them that he had one request for them: that they were to find whoever this being was that committed these acts, and they were to bring him to his place immediately. The 2 demons nodded their head as they vanished into the night as well. Whatever they were, these forces that had now gathered together, there was a new power out there. One that was not demon in nature, and one that was not human. But whatever this power was, it was a power that could rival even a demon. This power needed to be sought after immediately, because if this was just a small sample of what it could do, then it was nothing but absolute carnage. This concludes What If Tanjiro Had Venom? Demon Slayer Dark Fury Part 4. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for What If Deku Was a Power Ranger, Heroes of the Morphing Grid, as well as One Piece Rangers of the Sea that are going to be coming out later on this week. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.